Today we are going to discuss the topic is fluorimetry. So, what is meant by fluorimetry? Fluorimetry is nothing but measurement of fluorescence light. So, fluorimetry is fluori plus metry. Fluori means fluorescence. Metry means measurement. So, we are measuring the fluorescence light produced by the molecule. So, what is meant by fluorescence? Emission of a light by molecule when a compound or a molecule exposed to UV visible radiation or electromagnetic radiation. Such molecules are called as fluorescent compounds. The phenomenon is called as fluorescence. So here a schematic representation how the light will be emits the light nothing but fluorescence, how the compound will be emits the fluorescent light. So here the light source will be there. From this light source, the light will be produced. The produced light is fall on the sample. So that light is called as incident light. So when the incident light fall on the sample, some amount of light is absorbed by the compound. By absorbing that energy, the molecules are going to the excited state. Again they are coming to the ground state from the excited state by emitting the absorbed radiation. So the emission of radiation is called as fluorescence. Here the fluorescence or emitted radiation is measured in the right angle to the light source or monochromator or filter. That filter is primary filter. If you are measuring the emitted light in the same direction of the transmitted light, that time here there is a interference of transmitted light with the emitted light will be happen. So we cannot exactly determine the how much amount of light is emitted. For that reason, to determine the exact amount of light is emitted by the compound, we are keeping the detector or we are measuring the emitted light in 90 degrees or right angle to the light source. So the introduction, before going to the fluorescence, we have to discuss the luminescence. Luminescence is a phenomena where the molecules emits the light when they have absorbed the light. When a molecule is exposed to the electromagnetic radiation like UV visible radiation, some compounds will be emits the light is called as luminescent compound. That phenomena is called luminescence. The emitted light is having less energy than the absorbed light. So that's why the luminescence light is also called as cold light. In luminescence, three types of phenomena are there. One is fluorescence, phosphorescence, and chemiluminescence. And everything by using one diagram. The name is Jablonski diagram. In this Jablonski diagram, we have representing the three states. Ground state, here the molecules are paired with opposite spin. The electrons are paired with opposite spin. In excited state, the singlet excited state, the electrons are unpaired with opposite spin. Another one is the triplicate excited state. Here, the electrons are with the same spin with unpaired. So most of the electrons in a molecules are present in the ground state. So when we give the UV visible radiation or electromagnetic radiation, the electrons, the molecule absorb the radiation, they are going to excited state, from the ground state to excited state. At excited state, they are unstable. The time taken for excitation of electrons is 10 to the power of minus 15 seconds. The time taken for the excitation of electrons is this, how much time it will be taking is 10 to the power of minus 15 seconds. At excited state, there is a three phenomena will be happen. The first phenomena is collisional deactivation. In this collisional deactivation, the molecules are at excited state, they will collide with each other and they will be lost the entire absorbed radiation. So, as unstable, again they are returning to the ground state. During this process, they won't emit any energy. The entire absorbed radiation is removed or lost as a collisional deactivation. So, this process is called as a collisional deactivation. So, here we are not getting anything. So, that's why we are calling it as radiationless process. No light is emitted, no radiation is emitted here. In some cases, what happens in some molecules, there is a phenomena will be happen, that is vibrational transition or vibrational relaxation. From the absorbed energy at excited state, from the absorbed radiation, some amount of radiation will be lost in the form of vibrational transition or vibrational relaxation. When they are again coming from singlet excited state to ground state, they will be emit the remaining radiation what they have absorbed. This phenomena is called as fluorescence. The time taken is 10 to the power of minus 6 to 10 to the power of minus 10 seconds. And some compounds, some molecules, they will be crossing the system from singlet excited state to triplicate state in the presence of oxygen. That is called as intersystem crossing. After crossing the intersystem, they will reach to the triplicate excited state. When they are coming from the triplicate excited state to ground state, they will be emit the radiation. This process is called as phosphorescence. It will be takes a little bit more time than the fluorescence. It is around 10 to the power of minus 6 to 10 seconds. That's why the fluorescence is called as the instantaneous process. The phosphorescence is called as delayed process. So here I give all the information here. A molecular electronic transition state in which all of the electrons are paired are called as singlet state. In a singlet state, molecules are diamagnetic. Most of the molecules in their ground state are paired. When such molecules absorb UV visible radiation, one or more of the paired electrons are raised to excited single state or excited triplicate state. From the singlet excited state, at the singlet excited state, one of the following phenomena occurs: vibrational relaxation, intersystem crossing, collisional deactivation. Due to collisional deactivation, radiationless process will be happen. During to intersystem crossing, the phosphorescence will be happen. Due to vibrational relaxation, fluorescence will be happen. So what is by fluorescence means? It occurs when electrons transition from singlet excited state to ground state, emits the radiation. This is called as fluorescence. Fluorescence is an instantaneous process. Why? Because the fluorescence starts immediately after absorption of the light and stops as soon as the incident light is cut off. If you cut off the incident light, automatically the fluorescence will be stopped immediately. So this is the instantaneous process. The substance showing the phenomena are known as fluorescent substances. Phosphorescence occurs when electrons transit from triplicate state to ground state, emits the radiation. When light is incident on certain substances, they emit the continuously after the incident light is cut off. Even though we are cut offing the incident light, the light will be emitted for some extent of time. So that's why the phosphorescence is called as delayed process. The phosphorescence is also called as delayed fluorescence. Such phenomena is called as phosphorescence. The compounds which showing that phenomena is called as phosphorescent substances. So, fluorescent intensity, nothing but the intensity of emitted light is called as fluorescent intensity. Some factors will be affecting the fluorescent intensity produced by a molecule. So, what are the factors? Conjugation, nature of the molecule, nature of the substituent, effect of concentration, absorption, oxygen, pH, photodecomposition, temperature, viscosity. First is nature of the molecules. All molecules cannot show the phenomena of fluorescence. So in so many compounds are available in the universe. All compounds cannot show the fluorescence. The compounds shows fluorescence which having absorbed the UV visible radiation. Such compounds only shows the fluorescence. Not all compounds which will be absorb the UV radiations. Even though some compounds absorb the UV radiation, they won't emit the light. Only some compounds. The compounds which are showing the fluorescence means they are absorbing the UV visible radiation. Nature of the substituent. Compound is a fluorescent substance, fluorescent molecule. So if we are adding any type of substance or we are removing any type of substance also influence the fluorescent intensity of a molecule. Like electron donating groups enhance the fluorescence. The electron donating groups will be increase the fluorescent intensity of compound, that is NH2 and OH group. And electron withdrawing groups decreases the fluorescent intensity. That is carboxylic group and nitro group and azo group. High atomic number molecule, if you are introducing into the system, pi electron system, it will be decrease the fluorescence. Effect of concentration. Fluorescence is directly proportional to the concentration at low concentration levels only. This is the most important one. At high level concentrations, they won't have any linear relationship between the concentration versus fluorescent intensity. Light. Compulsory, we have to use the monochromatic light for excitation of the molecule. If you are using polychromatic light, there is a change in the intensity. Why? Because each and every molecule shows a maximum absorbance or maximum fluorescence at a certain single wavelength. So that's why we have to select a monochromatic light or a single wavelength light. Oxygen. In the presence of oxygen, there is a chance of two phenomena will be happen. One is when the fluorescent compound is reacted with the oxygen. Due to oxidation, the fluorescent compound will be converted into non-fluorescent compound. So if it is a non-fluorescent compound, it won't emit any radiation. And by quenching of fluorescence, quenching means decreasing in the intensity of fluorescence or decreasing in the intensity of emitted light. It is due to the paramagnetic properties at triplicate state. Triplicate state. Why? Because of this oxygen only, the molecules will be crossing the intersystem. If it will be crossing intersystem means it will be coming from singlet excited state to triplicate state. So when it will be reached to the triplicate state, the phenomenon is called phosphorescence will be happen. The fluorescence will be decreases that time. Next is pH. Alteration of pH also have significant effect or significant role on the intensity of light produced by the compound or fluorescence. Compulsory, you have to maintain appropriate pH. Fluorescent spectrum or the fluorescent unit values are vary with the ionized form and unionized form. If the compound will be undergo ionization well, that time the fluorescent intensity will be increased. In the ionized form, it will be shows the more fluorescent intensity. Suppose here the phenols are there. Phenol in acidic solution, the unionized form, so no fluorescence light will be produced. Phenols in the alkaline conditions, ionized form, means fluorescence will be produced. Temperature and viscosity. So as the temperature increases, the fluorescent intensity decreases. Because as the temperature increases, at excited state, the collisional deactivation of molecule will be happen. So the collisional deactivation means it is a radiationless process. So that's why as the temperature increases, there is a chance of increasing the collision. So that's why there is a decreasing in the fluorescent intensity. Viscosity increases, viscosity of the medium or solvent will be increases, the fluorescent intensity will be increases. Why? Because In the solution, the solvent and the solute particles will be there. If the viscosity will be more, that time what happens, the solvent will be resist the flow of these molecules or solute particles. So they are unable to collide with each other. So if the collisions are decreasing, so that's why there is no loss of energy. So that's why the fluorescent intensity or fluorescent radiation will be increased. Intensity of incident light. So if you are giving the more, if you are exposing the if you are exposing the sample to high intensive incident light, that time the more amount of fluorescent intensity will be produced. So the light emitted from the lamp, excitation monochromator, excitation slit width will be plays a key role in the intensity of monochromatic light. Rigidity of the molecule. If it is having flexible structure and rigid structures will be there, the structure will be very rigid, more fluorescence. Structure will be very flexible, less fluorescence. Path length. Increasing the path length, nothing but volume of sample or sample cell. The capacity of the sample cell will be increases. So that time what happened? The increasing in the path length of incident light of the sample increase the fluorescent intensity. So the path length of the sample cell increases, more amount of sample will be present in the sample cell and more amount of the incident light will be absorbed by the compound. So more amount of light will be emitted. So these are the different factors affecting the fluorescent intensity. Quenching. Increase the fluorescent intensity. So the path length of the sample cell increases, more amount of sample will be present in the sample cell and more amount of the incident light will be absorbed by the compound. So more amount of light will be emitted. So these are the different factors affecting the fluorescent intensity. Quenching. Quenching is nothing but decreasing the fluorescent intensity of a compound is called as quenching. So many factors will be causes the quenching. Already we have discussed some factors. Same factors again here repeating. The factors like pH, concentration, pressure, some type of chemical substances, temperature and viscosity. So here we are classifying the quenching into different types. So here we are discussing the types of quenching: self-quenching, chemical quenching, static quenching, collisional quenching. Self-quenching also called as concentration quenching. I already told, as the concentration increases, the fluorescent intensity will be increased at low concentration. The first graph, it is represent the low concentrations. That time, we are getting a linear relationship between the fluorescent intensity and the concentration of the solute particles or fluorescent species. At high concentration, a somewhat deviation in the linear relationship will be happen. Why? Because at high concentration, more number of solute particles are present in the solution. That time, when a light will be fall on sample, one solute particle will be emit the radiation. The radiation emitted by the one solute particle, it will be fall on the adjacent particle or adjacent solute particle. It cannot directly reach to the detector. That time, whatever the emitter radiation will be there, it will be circulated in the system only. That time, whatever the emitter radiation will be there, it will be circulated in the system only, in the sample solution only. They cannot reach it to the detector. So, entire radiation cannot, concentration increases, the fluorescent intensity will be increased at low concentration. The first graph, it is represent the low concentrations. That time, we are getting a linear relationship between the fluorescent intensity and the concentration of the solute particles or fluorescent species. At high concentration, a somewhat deviation in the linear relationship will be happen. Why? Because at high concentration, more number of solute particles are present in the solution. That time, when a light will be fall on sample, one solute particle will be emit the radiation. The radiation emitted by the one solute particle, it will be fall on the adjacent particle or adjacent solid particle. It cannot directly reach to the detector. That time, whatever the emitter radiation will be there, it will be circulated in the system only, in the sample solution only. They cannot reach it to the detector. So entire emitter radiation cannot reach it to the detector because of the inter circulation of emitted light will be happen. For that reason, entire light cannot be reached to the detector. That's why at high concentration, a small increasing in the absorbance fluorescent values will be happen, or where it is at high level concentration, we are getting a constant values or plateau. So that's why we are calling self-quenching. We are not adding anything. As a only concentration itself causing the quenching. That's why we are calling it as self-quenching. Chemical quenching. Here, because of some chemicals, factors like pH, presence of oxygens, halides and heavy metals, and the presence of bromide, chloride, iodide, because of electron withdrawing groups like NO2, COH, all the factors will be causes the decreasing in the fluorescent intensity. Because of some chemicals, chemical nature, the decreasing in the fluorescent intensity will be happen. That's why we are calling it as chemical quenching. Static quenching. The static quenching because of complexation. Compulsory, the complex is forming. It is not converted into ion form. Complex. That time what happened in the most cases the complexes are insoluble. So there is no ionization will be there. So that's why if any compound will be forming complex with any chemical, that time fluorescent intensity will be decreases. That is called as static quenching. So this occurs due to the complex formation. Caffeine reduces the fluorescence of riboflavin by the complex formation. When we are reacting caffeine with riboflavin, in general the riboflavin is the fluorescent substance. We are adding caffeine to the riboflavin. A complex is formed. So the fluorescent intensity will be decreased. Collisional quenching, I already discussed. If the collisions will be happen, what happen? The absorbed radiation will be lost. So that's why as the number of collisions increases, so that time the fluorescent intensity also increases or decreases. So we are discussing the instrumentation of fluorimetry now. Till now we have discussed the what are the different factors and quenching and the introduction. Now we are discussing the instrumentation. In this instrumentation, the light source will be there. From this light source, the light will be produced. So we are using the monochromators. Or filters we are using. Filters also one type of monochromators. The primary filter will be filters the light. Only the required wavelength only passing through the sample cell. When it will be reached to the sample, the whatever the phenomena I explained, they are going from the ground state to excited state. Again they are coming to the ground state from the excited state. So when they are coming from the again excited state to ground state, they will be emit the radiation. Now the emitter radiation is passing through the secondary filter and then it will be reached to the detector. The function of primary filter, what is the function of secondary filter? The primary filter will filters the light which is required by the sample solution. The secondary filter only filters the emitted light. Some scatter light will be there, transmitter light will be there. So it will be filters the light and it will be only permeable for the emitted light. Then it will be reached to the detector. So these are the instrumentation. We have discussed light source, filters and monochromators, sample cell and detector. Source of light. What are the different type of source of lights? We have mercury arc lamp, xenon arc lamp, tungsten lamp, tunable, dye laser. So the mercury arc lamp will be produce a wavelength of 350 nanometers. If you are filling the mercury with high pressure, it will give a wavelength of 366, 401, 436, 446, 577, 691, 734 nanometers. If you are filling with low pressures, it will be produce additional wavelength wavelength light is 254 nanometer light. Xenon arch lamp and tungsten lamp. Only this is the one we are using for the visible. Remaining all are used for the UV only. Tungsten lamp is for the visible. Tunable dye laser lamp. The tunable dye laser lamp we are using the laser light is nitrogen laser light, pulse nitrogen laser light. So the radiation produced by this tunable dye laser is the range is around 360 to 650 nanometers. In filters and monochromators, filters are the primary filter and secondary filter. The primary filter will be absorb the visible radiation and it will be permeable to the UV light. Why? Because whatever the light fall on the sample should have high energy and less wavelength, shorter wavelength, higher energy and shorter wavelength. So if you are giving UV visible lights both, that time in this the UV light is having more energy and shorter wavelength. So it will be allows the UV light and it will be stop the visible light. Secondary filters. The secondary filters absorbs UV radiation and transmit the visible light means. So when the UV light will be fall on the sample cell, some amount of light energy will be lost. Means the energy is lost means wavelength will be increased. Means there is a chance of the UV light will be converted to visible light. So the emitted light in the form of visible light it is coming. So that's why it will be allows or permeable to visible light and it will be stop the UV light. Compulsory we have to keep these two filters in the 90 degrees angle. Monochromators. Here the filters are replaced with the monochromator. In the primary filter we are giving the excitation monochromator and the secondary filter place we are replacing with the emission monochromator. The excitation monochromator it will be allows the radiation which is have an appropriate wavelength for excitation of the molecule. So that's why that monochromator called as excitation monochromator. It will be give the provide the radiation for the excitation of the molecule. Emission monochromator. The emission monochromator it will be allows the and it will be collect the radiation emitted by the sample. That's why we are calling it as emission monochromator. Sample and sample holder. In the most cases, the majority of the sample holders are having path length of 1 centimeter or 10 millimeter. But in UV visible spectroscopy, in the UV, the sample cell is having two rough surfaces and two smooth surfaces and two rough surfaces. Two surfaces are polished. So here all surfaces are smooth. Why? Because here we are measuring the emitted light, not transmitted light. So and here the detectors are there. Generally we are using detectors are the fluorimetry are photovoltaic cell, phototube, photomultiplier. The photomultiplier the most commonly used in the spectrofluorimeter. Spectrofluorimeter. In the fluorimeter we are using photovoltaic cell and phototube. Here the photovoltaic cell or phototube we are calling. Here we are discussing the construction and the working principle of photovoltaic cell. Here it is having a one metal base. It is made up of copper or iron. So above the metal base it is coated with a semiconducting material that is selenium. Above the selenium another metal gold or silver is coated or spouted here. So it is the gold or silver act as a cathode and the metal base is act as a anode, not cathode. Sorry. Metal is anode, metal base is anode, the gold is cathode. So when the light will be fall on, UV or visible light will be fall on this gold layer or silver layer, that time a number of electrons will be produced. So whatever the electrons are produced, they will try to come into the metal base layer due to the concentration gradient. So at the gold layer more number of electrons are there, at metal base no electrons are there. When they will try to come towards the metal base, the barrier between the selenium and metal base, they will be resist the flow of the electrons. So that time, total whatever the electrons are produced, they will be accumulated in the gold layer. So that time, there is a difference in the potential will be happen. Potential difference between the cathode and anode will be happen. Due to this potential difference, the current will be generated. So here I have explained all these things. The maximum sensitivity of this detector is 550 nanometers, and it is most commonly used for the visible region, and it consists of a flat copper and a ferrous electrode on which the semiconductors such as selenium is deposited. On selenium thin layer, gold or silver is spotted over the surface. A barrier exists between the selenium and iron which prevents the electron flowing through the iron. Electrons are accumulated on the silver surface, thus it produces voltage. Photo cell or photo tube. It is having a one glass tube, evacuated glass tube. In this evacuated glass tube, one cathode, off cylindrical cathode will be there. In the off cylindrical cathode is nothing but it is made up of a one metal tube, off cylindrical metal tube will be there. And the inner surface of off cylindrical metal tube is coated with the photoemissive substances like cesium and potassium oxide. So they are represented with the blue. It is coated with blue. The blue represents the photoemissive layer. Exactly parallel to the this cathode, a wire is there, a metal wire. It is act as the anode. So when the light will be fallen, UV light will be fallen, the photoemissive cathode, the electrons are produced. Whatever the produced electrons are there, they are reached to the anode. Due to this, the voltage or current will be generated. Photocell is more sensitive than the photovoltaic cell. Photomultiplier. As the name suggests, the multiplication of electrons will be happen here. So it is similar to phototube, like it is having cathode and anode. But in between cathode and anode, we are having some electrodes, nothing but 9 to 16 electrodes we are calling it as dynode. These dynodes have, they have photoemissive property. They are dynodes having electron multiplication property. So when the light will be fall on cathode, it will be produce the electrons. The produced electrons are reflected on the dynode, one diode. So the electron is multiplied. From the electrons from the one dynode, again they will be reached to the another dynode. So multiplication of electrons occurred. So due to the multiplication of electrons, one electron should be multiplied into different times and we will get the more number of electrons. It is a more sensitive and we are getting the high intensive signal we are getting here. So we can easily get an application of electrons will be happen. So we are getting a good signal here. That's why the most commonly used detector in the UV visible spectroscopy and spectrophlorimetry is photomultiplier. Next is types of instrument designs. What are the different types of instruments we have? Single beam fluorimeter, double beam fluorimeter and spectrophlorimeter. In single beam fluorimeter and double beam fluorimeter, in the single beam fluorimeter, what happened? Only one single beam of light is passing through the one sample cell. Only we are having one sample holder with one sample cell. Only one primary filter, one secondary filter will be there. So we can keep the blank. After reading the blank set to the 0, then we have to keep the sample and measure the fluorescent intensity. So that's why it is a very time taken process. Very time taken process it is. So tungsten lamp as a light source will be there. The primary filter absorbs the visible radiation and emits the UV radiation. Emitter radiation is measured at 90 degrees by secondary filter. Already we have discussed all these things. Secondary filter absorbs UV radiation and transmitter radiation. The advantage of this one, simple construction and easy to handle and economical. But it is disadvantages are it is not possible to use reference solution, sample solution at a time. First we have to keep the reference solution and set to 0. After we are removing the reference solution, then we have to keep the sample solution. So the rapid scanning is cannot happen here, we cannot obtain here. In the double beam spectropolarimeter, we have two beam of lights will be there. Two beam of lights will be there. So the lamp will be there. One is going to the downward side, another beam of light is going to the upward side. So two primary filters are there, one primary filter and another primary filter. Two sample cells are there. One is for reference, another is for the sample. From this one, the two secondary filters will be there, and then it will be reached to the photomultiplier. So the rapid scanning will be there. Very less time taken process. This is less time will be required for this one. A more number of samples can be analyzed, and at a time we can use the reference and the sample solution. Two beam of lights, that's why we are called double beam fluorimeter. So spectropolarimeter, the difference between fluorimeter and spectropolarimeter is only one thing, that is in the place of the filters we are using the monochromator. The primary filter in the double beam spectropolarimeter is replaced with the excitation monochromator. The secondary filter is replaced with the emission monochromator. And the detector we are using is photomultiplier here. So advantages, rapid scanning will be happen and more sensitive and accurate results we are getting compared to the fluorimeters which is having filters. So which is having the monochromators like spectropolarimeter is the more sensitive one, and more accurate results we are getting from the spectropolarimeter compared to the fluorimeters which are having the filters like primary filter and secondary filters. So this is a one schematic diagram of spectropolarimeter. So here excitation monochromator is there, analyzer monochromator. The analyzer monochromator is nothing but emission monochromator. Applications. So we know very well about the applications. So we can easily determine the concentration of the compounds, determination and qualitative applications and quantitative applications of some inorganic compounds or organic compounds. Here we have given some examples of inorganic substances: determination of ruthenium ion, presence of other platinum metals, aluminum present in the alloys, and boron in the steel, and cadmium with the benzoxazole in the presence of tartarates. The nuclear research we are in the determination of uranium salts. The organic analysis is a qualitative and quantitative analysis of organic compounds present in the cigarettes, smoke, air pollutions, automobiles, and etc. And also used for determination of some pharmaceutical compounds. We are determining or we are estimating the quality and quantity of the substances like hydrocortisone. And what is the reagent we are using here? We are represented here: nicotinamide, ergotamine, chlorodiazepoxide, methyl dopa, indomethacin, phenyl sulfate, riboflavin, disipramine, etc. So many are there. And used in the liquid chromatography also. Fluorescence is an important method for determination of compounds as they appear at the end of the chromatogram. So we are using the chromatography techniques in that liquid chromatography techniques and TLC we are using all these things. The capillary electrophoresis columns also we are using. Fluorescent stationary phases are there. Determination of B1 and B2. And some fluorescent indicators commonly we are using in the acid-base titrations are eosin, which will produce the colorless to green, fluorescein, colorless to green, phenyl sulfate, blue to violet, and acridine, green to violet. So these are regarding the fluorimetry and fluorescence spectroscopy. So thank you for watching this video, and please try to share this video to your friends. I hope this will be helpful for, especially for the B.Pharm students and PharmD students who are having these topics in their syllabus, like B.Pharm third year and PharmD third year and B.Pharm final year students first semester. So it is also useful for the M.Pharm pharmaceutical analysis people also, this all the videos. I am keeping all analytical chemistry videos here. Thank you so much for watching.